So we are living in a world of alternate facts where almost every claim has a counterclaim now. Fake news spreads on social media like wildfire, and there are unfortunately more people who take what they read at face value. Today, I'm speaking to Pallavi Nahata, who is a financial journalist from Mumbai, India, who covers the what's what of the Indian economy at Bloomberg Quint. Hi, Pallavi. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to speak to me. So my first question would be, do you think fake news is the biggest issue that is ailing journalism today?
Hi. Yes, I do think it's one of yeah, for sure. I definitely think it's one of the biggest issues that's ailing journalism today. Yeah.
And how do you categorize fake in economic or financial reporting, seeing as how much of it is factual or data driven?
Okay, so see, when compared to other fields, we do have the advantage of being able to rely on numbers a lot more than you can in other aspects of journalism. So that helps. But yes, there we don't we can't back everything up with data. There are a lot of indicators. There are a lot of aspects of the Indian economy, for instance, where there's still lack of data or lack of government data.
Okay.
So yes, that's one thing. That not every aspect of the Indian economy or the global economy can be backed with data. And secondly, I think it's also easier. It's not very hard to twist data around to be
Yeah.
able to paint a certain picture that suits your narrative.
Yeah. Okay. So in that context, and with the rise of fake news, have you become more conscious about how you go about chasing a story and in what you publish?
Absolutely. So we've always been very careful of what sources we look at when we try and write on an issue, government data, or to data from organizations of a certain level of credibility and repute, globally, like say maybe an IMF or a World Bank or an OECD and other such organizations. So I think every time I try and do a story, I try and back it up with data to substantiate and validate the point I'm trying to make by that story. And when I look for data, I definitely try and look for either official, government data or data from some of these organizations that I've mentioned. Where that is not available, then private organizations with repute, with a certain level of credibility. Like for instance, in India, employment data is a problem. The government does not publish high frequency data on employment, so it's an excessively important indicator, more so in since the onset of the pandemic. So then a lot of us rely extensively on data by the Center for Monitoring the Indian Economy, which is a private think tank of sorts. And so we try and so occasionally there are issues raised regarding the validity of such data, but we try and caveat for those wherever we can.
Okay. Yeah. So in that context, have you ever got it wrong, or someone at Bloomberg who's gotten it wrong? And like, was it a big thing? Was it minor? And how did you correct it? And does the correction matter?
Absolutely. You have to be, so we have so I can't speak for other organizations, but here we have multiple checks. So, I pitch a story and then I write it out. I am very specific with, we have to quote the source. It's only in exceptional cases where, your information is of sensitive nature, or is not publicly available and has been procured from a reliable source. That's usually not the case with my stories. In like, since I report on the economy, I don't usually have too many source-based stories.
Okay.
Right. So in my case, I usually rely on publicly available,
Data.
publicly
Okay.
accessible data. And there again in the story, if you read a story, it usually says that, okay, so and so figure
Mm.
as per so and so
Okay.
government release
Mm.
dated so and so.
Mm.
And there are multiple other people apart from the story who edit it,
Okay.
who verify before the story is published.
Okay.
So that's how it works. Not so much with me, but in case of others where there is source-based information involved,
Mm.
of course, despite taking the best of measures, sometimes on rare instances there can be an error.
Mm.
And once that happens, I think the ideally what needs to be done is you put out a correction plate on social media, and you add that in your story saying that, okay, this was what was put out and it's incorrect and the error is regretted. I mean, that's normally the best that one can do in such a circumstance. But yeah, that said, you can, the idea is to try and be as careful as you possibly
Right.
can, and minimize the scope for making such mistakes.
Right. And does working for a trusted news organization like Bloomberg make your life easy, like because usually the trust follows the brand? Or do you think you have more pressure to get things right the first time, or no scope for mistakes?
Um, I think it's a little bit of both. So, yes, working for a brand does have its benefit. So I think, even otherwise, like as a journalist, I try and read up as much as I can.
Right.
So how do you know what to, like how do you decide what you should read,
Mm.
what you should avoid reading? So I go by brand too, right? Like
Yeah.
certain publications,
Yeah.
certain brands where I think the scope for error is limited. I try and read those, and I think that the reason I also read Bloomberg and Bloomberg Quint is because I can say with a fair share of confidence that most of the data is validated. If it's source based,
Mm.
it's from more than one source, and hence the scope for errors a little
Yeah.
less. Yeah, so that helps, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And like you mentioned, the second part, there's also added pressure. So we do have multiple checks, especially if it's a source-based story,
Mm.
to try and avoid the margin for error. So if it's a source-based
Mm.
story, there's a certain protocol that needs to be followed.
Mm.
Your editor needs to be told. First of all, we try and keep the source-based stories to minimal, but of course, in some situations, that's unavoidable,
Yeah,
in which
exactly.
case you try and take your editor or somebody superior in your organization into confidence regarding who the source is,
Mm. Right. That
and
has
other
been
such checks. Yeah.
really informative for me as a budding journalist as well. Thank you so much, because we have been learning about data journalism, etc. So that is really, really informative. Thank you so much for speaking to me. And yeah, we'll see you again.
Thank you. Wish